Okay, so let's start. So I'm Cedric from ratings.com.
And I'm Daniel.
So today we doing a live stream that's going to last 30 minutes about the Sony X900F, which is on the left, and the Samsung Q8FN on the right. So for the first 25 minutes, we're going to answer your questions specific about the main topic of these two TVs. And then after that, we're going to have the last 5 minutes for open questions about anything that you want to ask us, either other models or it could be anything that you want. But for the first 25 minutes, we're going to keep it focused about the main subject. So type your questions into chats while we talk, and then we can answer them.
And even in the first 25 minutes, ask us questions about these TVs, and as we're going, we'll answer those.
So as I mentioned, so it's a 900F on the left and Q8FN on the right. Now we chose these two TVs since we get a lot of questions comparing the two. Both are full array and both are one step below the top of the line for each respective brand. So it makes it for a really good comparison. And they also perform somewhat similarly, so it makes it a very good to compare. So let's start, Daniel, while we wait for questions to come in. What do you think is the main difference between these two TVs?
So it really depends how you use it, but personally for me, it's the gaming features of the Samsung. That it has a few neat things we haven't really seen on TVs before. FreeSync variable refresh rate support. It's useful for people that game either on a AMD graphics card or with the Xbox One S or X. There's a couple other gaming features too though. There's the interpolation with low input lag. So it still stays under 30 milliseconds of input lag even when you're interpolating low frame rate content. So that really helps with like 30 FPS games.
Would you use that feature?
Maybe. I know there are a lot of artifacts in it, and personally maybe not, but we have heard from a lot of people that do really like it. So
yeah, personally I would use it. I like motion interpolation, and 30 frames per second games is a little bit too choppy. So the worth the like 15 milliseconds more about for that feature.
Yeah. So it's not even, I think it goes from 20 up to a maximum of 30 milliseconds when you've got interpolation on. So it's pretty good. It's Yeah, it does have some more artifacts than the standard motion interpolation. So there's actually two options in the settings menu. One is for the normal interpolation, the other is the game motion plus interpolation. So
Can you actually show it in the menu now?
Yeah. So there's actually a secondary, So there's a game mode settings here that you can turn on, and I don't know how well you can see that, it's just got a bit brighter. But under here there's the game motion plus options that you can add interpolation. And this is basically completely distinct from the normal other picture modes motion interpolation that's in the expert settings here. So yeah, it's a cool feature, and we've received feedback from like a lot of people that really enjoy it. And yeah, overall it also has a little bit less input lag than the Sony. It's most obvious at 1080p, where it's basically 20 milliseconds against about 40 on the Sony. So if you really care about low input lag, then it's a good feature.
Okay. So we have a question from El Gonga that asks, the Q8FN for me is about 500 more expensive than the 900F. Is it worth paying the extra for if he's more of a gamer? So like to get those extra features that you just talked about, is it worth spending 500 more to get those?
I guess it depends. If you game on like you plan to use FreeSync, then that's a bonus. If you can afford it, then yes, it's there are some nice features, and it is basically, I think it's basically one of the best TVs for gaming. So,
and because of these features, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully Sony in the next few years they add those kind of features like a FreeSync support and all that kind of things.
I guess especially with the large format gaming displays that are supposed to be coming out at some point.
Oh yeah.
Should hopefully increase the competition there.
So we have a question from Convile that asks, is the color volume of QLED so noticeable? Is the difference so obvious to the point that it's worth spending more to get the Q8?
It depends how you use it. So if you watch a lot of HDR content, then So basically for SDR content, it doesn't actually make a difference, and you're not really going to notice it if you watch like an accurate image, simply because those colors aren't there in the source material. On the other hand, if you watch something that is in HDR, and actually we've got a Blu-ray player here and a couple Blu-rays, we can put something on to show you, but it is noticeable. But again, it depends on the scene. It's not in all content, and it's usually in highlights. So
for most content, the extra color gamut is not really noticeable. It's only like specific scenes or more like animation movies, since it's a lot more saturated content, you're gonna see it more there. Normally in the movie, it's hard to see it, but we can actually show a scene, Daniel. So we're gonna put Batman versus Superman. There's a scene that really shows the color differences a little bit more. So we're gonna put the Blu-ray on, and then.
Oh, it's already started playing. Here we go. So here we can see. So this is. I'll show you the title. This is the Batman vs Superman. It's a HDR movie, and the reason we chose it is actually has a few of those scenes that it really showcases the bright highlights or vivid colors.
So a little bit of spoiler there if you haven't watched the movie yet. So maybe you should stop watching now.
Won't be long. Maybe a minute or so.
Yeah, we're gonna try not to spoil the movie.
Let's see, so we'll find some. So here's a scene on the rooftop. I'll pause it here. So can you see that, the difference in the green there?
Yeah. So we see it on the screen.
On the Samsung, this is with the more vivid colors. It's a wider color gamut, and you can see it's more of a saturated green. So overall, it's basically the saturation that's the difference here.
Yeah, but you need to find the scene, so it's not going to be everything that's going to be more colorful. It's only specific scenes that were mastered to be more colorful. So it depends. I wouldn't say that it's the main thing that you should buy the QLED just for that, but it's a nice bonus to have. To answer a question about Take Me Out, what's the mode that the 900F is currently in?
So at the moment, let's see. So we're in HDR at the moment. It's the custom picture mode. Mm-hmm. So actually, I'll go through both TVs and you can have a look. So first, the Sony. It's in the custom picture mode with maximum brightness. And we've also got auto local dimming on high and extended dynamic range on high. So this is to produce the brightest HDR highlights. Color is left to the default, the good accurate value. The color temperature is on Expert 1. This is a warm color temperature that's closest to the color temperature that movies are mastered at. And we've disabled all of the clarity features because it's a high quality HDR Blu-ray. Mm-hmm. And the motion settings are also disabled. On the Samsung, on the other hand, we're in the movie picture mode. So we've got the maximum backlight, maximum contrast. The digital clean view, those sort of settings are disabled because it's high quality content. Local dimming's on high, and again it's the warm 2 color tone. This is the closest one to the 6500 Kelvin that movies are mastered at, and otherwise it's color space setting is auto. So these are actually our recommended HDR settings for both TVs, and you can see that the wider color gamut of the Q8FN, it isn't noticeable in some scenes.
So we have a question from Daniel Carras 90 that asks, which TV has more accurate color reproduction? For example, here we see a little bit of color differences. So let's say out of the box, without calibration done, which is the most accurate as far as color goes?
So in SDR, it's definitely the Sony X900F. HDR gets a bit more tricky because tone mapping comes into play, so it's hard to say that one is more or less accurate because there's no real standard. But for SDR, The Sony X900F, it is more accurate.
Out of the box.
Yeah.
But we still got a pretty close calibration on the Samsung after like playing with the settings, right?
Yeah, with the Samsung, both of them are fine to calibrate. The Sony's a little bit easier, but it also, the interesting thing about calibration of the Sonys, they don't actually have a color management system this year.
Yeah, this year. Z9F will have one.
Yes, so you sometimes, well, you can't adjust the color space as much, but you can still get a very accurate image on both of them.
Okay, so let's start talking about another difference between these two that you can actually be able to see on screen, which is the reflections.
Oh yeah. So for this, actually, maybe we can.
Because it's a pretty noticeable difference in terms of screen finish between these two TVs.
Yeah. I'm actually going to turn off the TVs now, and you'll be able to see. So
you have a. Oh, you have your phone.
Yeah.
That should work.
Here we go. So this is just a spotlight from my phone, and you can see there that the screen finish of them is very different. The Samsung, moving out of the webcam. The Samsung has much fewer reflections. It's got.
On. Yeah, and we're gonna open just the lights here so that it reflects a bit more. You're gonna see more the differences between these two.
Yeah.
So on the left it's the 900F, on the right the Q8FN. So you can see that the 900F does reflect more overall than the Q8FN.
And it has a slightly more of a semi-gloss finish. You can see the center of that point light source is kind of diffuse a little bit, but it's still more intense than the Samsung is. So if you've got a bright room or something, this is definitely something to consider, that the Q8FN is better at handling these reflections.
So let's talk about about the brightness. So which is the brighter TV between these two?
So overall, the Sony is a bit brighter. The difference isn't huge, but we'll actually be able to see it again on the same movie. I'll turn the Blu-ray player back on.
Now it's going to depend on the pattern, right? Because I believe on their website, like the 10% is actually brighter on the Q8.
Yes. So different TVs behave differently to different test patterns, and so the Samsung TVs do tend to perform very well with like the 10% window and other test patterns. The Sony, on the other hand, in normal content, it can actually produce brighter highlights. So we'll see that in a minute. It's and you can see that in the measurements on the website. I think the Sony is about 100 nits higher, or
in the real content.
In the real scene. So.
There might be a setting difference there. It's a little bit too dark, maybe on the Q8.
Yeah. I'll have a look.
Yeah, that's probably darker than what it should be.
Looks okay. Yeah, it looks to be okay. So it's,
yeah, maybe it's
perfect. So fine. I think around here there's a few, like there's lightning and there's other bright highlights that we can look at. And we actually brought, so we've got a tool here, an instrument that we can measure the peak brightness of different areas on the screen, so we can have a look at some real measurements from this content.
So to answer your question, David Rice, custom on Sony doesn't turn off all real-time processing. Some of them it turns off, but not all of them. One thing though about custom is the roll-off curve. It will clip the highlights. So maybe we can see maybe in a fire explosion. If we press pause, not there, but when there's a bright highlights, Daniel, and change between the mode of the Sony. So custom will be more accurate as far as how it reproduces the EOTF curve, but it will clip. So that means there's less details. But if you found something a little bit less accurate, but bring out more details in the highlights, then if you use Cinema Pro, you should be able to see a little bit more details in the highlights.
Yeah, it's not really noticeable in this scene, but maybe there's...
a little.
Yeah, actually you can see it a little bit, but maybe there's another example later. Actually, we could measure the brightness of these.
Yeah, let's measure brightness there.
So on the left here we have the Sony X900F, and this pretty large highlight is at about 760 nits, and on the Q8FN it's about 400 nits, 405 or so. Let's go to a couple more.
For Emi that asks, can you improve the video quality of the stream? It's pretty bad. I agree, it is pretty bad. Right now we're using a webcam. We are not really set up fully for streaming since it's our second live stream. Now we did a live stream for Prime Day, but this is our real live stream out of this. So if it goes well and if you like it, then we're actually gonna improve the quality. Let us know if you like that kind of format, more informal format than the normal videos. And if you like it, we're gonna do more of it, and then we can improve the quality of the live stream.
Okay, so there's some lightning here. I'll see if I can.
So Low2I asks, the Q8 looks like it has better blacks, especially like here.
So that might actually be a result of the reflection handling, that we're in sort of an average lit room, and it will produce something of a difference there. That I mean, I can see myself in the X900F at the moment, but
yeah. So if you have a few lights in your room, the reflections then the screen finish really matters. Matters more than like the contrast ratio to a degree. So that's why in some cases we recommend IPS in brighter rooms, because even if it has a low contrast ratio, it doesn't matter much if it reflects more light than what the black level is. So if you have a few lights, reflection matters. If outer lights are off though, of course it doesn't matter at all. So it depends on your setup if it matters or not. But as far as like let's say the local dimming, what's the difference between local dimming between these two TVs? I know.
So overall, they're not, well, the overall performance is fairly similar, but the Q8FN is a little bit more conservative. So if you've got sort of a bright object anywhere on the screen, it won't actually turn off the backlight completely. It will still leave that. If you're in a very completely dark room and you watch it, you might see that the sides are still a little bit gray, whereas I've lost my place on here.
But both are great TVs, and both the local dimming is pretty good compared to the rest. Now, of course, it's not as good as the local dimming of like the Zen 9D or the Q9FN, but for local dimming, it's pretty good, both performance.
Yeah. And yeah, they're really in the same ballpark. Some of it will come down to preference. If you like the deepest blacks, or if you normally when you get those like deepest blacks on these TVs that don't have too many zones, it'll result in some blooming.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Okay. So I think this is a good example where we can see the different picture modes of the Sony.
Oh yeah, definitely that's a good example. So in custom, since there's no roll off, it actually cuts at. So that's why it does this. But in the Custom Pro, it does a roll up, so you see more details. Now, which mode should you use? It depends if you want pure accuracy or actually want to see something in the highlights. So personally, I would use more one of the cinema mode. But as far as accuracy goes, custom is technically more accurate in that way.
And now we're in the cinema. What was it? This? Which one? I think it was the Cinema Pro mode I selected. Yes. So now in the Cinema Pro mode, and I'll do a peak brightness measurement between these two. So the X900F is about 749, 750 nits. The Q8FN is about 480, 481, or 482.
Mm-hmm. So make sure you keep asking your questions in the chat. We're gonna continue answering them. So about the differences between these two TVs. Let's talk about some advantages, Daniel, of the 900F compared to Q8. So we mentioned the Q8 is better for gaming because it has lower input lag, FreeSync, and the low input lag motion interpolation. We also mentioned the Q8 is better for the reflection finish.
Yep.
Now 900F, it's a little bit brighter in real content, so that's a plus for the Sony. What else the Sony is better at?
That's a good question. So,
Pre-calibration, we mentioned. Out of the box, colors are a little bit more accurate on the Sony than the Samsung.
there are more motion as a subject is kind of, it's a bit complex, but the 900F has more options to adjust it to your preference. So you can see if we go into the motion settings here. So through the motion flow menu, you can introduce some different things. So each of these clearness sliders does something a little bit different, which means that for most people, you'll be able to adjust between the clearness and the smoothness to find the kind of motion that you really like.
Yeah, we can even see, I believe, on the screen due to the shutter of the camera, you can see it flickering when you turn it on.
Oh, yeah. So when I...
So if you have control about motion, the Sony would give you more control. Now, is the motion better on the Sony? It depends on the mode and depends what you compare it with. Because by default, the Samsung does PWM, so it does flicker the screen, and it has the option of black frame insertion. So you can do what the Sony does, but you have less control. So it depends what you prefer. Like if you want to believe flicker-free, is the 900F flicker-free?
Almost. I think it has a frequency of 600 hertz or something, so it's is that right?
Oh, yeah, it flickers, but it's a strange pattern, right?
Yeah, it's a strange pattern. So it will be a lot less noticeable than the flicker of the Q8FN if you're sensitive to it.
But it's not pure flicker-free.
No. That's actually something I think that the Sonys this year are 720 hertz. So yeah, it's not very noticeable.
So Brandon Curry asks, which is better for live sports and cable TV? So for live sport and cable, which one would you recommend?
I'd say the biggest difference there is about room conditions, that if you're in a bright room, then you've got a lot of reflections, then the Q8FN might be a little bit better.
But the Sony gets brighter.
Yeah.
So what's more important in a bright room, brightness or reflections?
Yeah, it really depends on how you use it there.
For sports, though, there's no like black in the sports, so maybe reflections matters a little bit less and brightness matter more. But if you watch like movies in a bright room, then the screen reflection matters more than the brightness because you're gonna see more to blacks. But for stuff without blacks, like live sports, maybe brightness is better.
Yeah, yeah. They're both great TVs though for watching sports. Well, unless both TVs kind of have the downside that if you want to watch with a few people and you're seated at an angle, or there's some people at an angle, then both of them have bad viewing angles. So neither of them are really better for that.
Well, I just saw in the stream, so it looks like the 900F is almost white, the screen,
Yeah.
but actually doesn't show in real life. But that's just because of the camera that's clipping. Don't think that half the screen of the 900F is right now. It's not. It's the camera that's doing this.
I did lower so people can see if you the image is gone, but you will see.
Okay, well, yeah. When we switch to the other camera, then it's a little bit.
It's going to.
Yeah, I put it darker so you can see the result. The camera don't catch that attitude.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more also about these differences. Is there a difference? Now, there's a little bit difference I know about the uniformity between these two. Maybe you can show like green uniformity.
Yeah, yeah.
So now uniformity matters. Like for sports, we just got a question from Brandon about the sports. Since the field is pretty uniform, uniformity matters there. Now both TVs are not great for uniformity. All LCD TVs has uniformity issues, like darker corners, like the Sony has darker corners. You can see a little bit of bending too, and that's kind of expected. Even OLED isn't perfect in that aspect.
Okay, I'm going to adjust the brightness of these so it's the same, right?
Yeah, you can see there a little bit the darker corner on the 900F.
So I'm going to adjust them both to 97 nits on this. Thereabouts.
So So while Daniel adjusts, I'm gonna answer a question of Conveil. Which one has better BFI performance? A lot of reviewers compliment on the X-Motion clarity on 900F. Now something to be careful there, X-Motion clarity is not the normal traditional BFI. It's localized BFI, but the way it does localize basically PWM dimming, so it's a little bit there. So X-Motion clarity is not really revolutionary. It's almost the same thing that what Samsung does by default. But as far as pure BFI, so if you put the slider to clear next to the max, I think the Samsung is a little bit better because it's a pure 60 Hz, right?
Yes, that's right.
And
so if you watch like playing 60 Hz games or something, then you will get slightly clearer motion with less persistence, blur, and no duplications on the Samsung.
Yeah, because the BFI on the Sony creates a duplication, which is not ideal for this. So lots of small differences there. So we're up with the 25 minutes about this. So we're gonna take 5 minutes just for open questions that you have, not necessarily related to this. It could be related to these two TVs, but feel free to ask any questions, and we're gonna answer them. Now we have a question about Ahmad from headphones. We are not really familiar with headphones, so we're probably gonna do in the next few weeks Q&A just for headphones that you're gonna be able to answer your questions. But both me and Daniel are not really familiar with headphones to answer your question. Question from Georgel: why is uniformity such an issue? Is it Nebula deficiencies in the backlighting? Yes, and it's both the LCD layer and the backlight. So as a rule of thumb, for LCD TVs, the full array will have more DSC than edge-lit, because since the kind of outer grid is behind it, it's hard to diffuse the light uniformly with just a short distance. So you will see like all the LEDs. It's more extreme in like the cheaper TVs, like the TCL6 series. You can actually count the LEDs behind the screen. So full array, it's a little bit worse. So part of it's the backlight, but part of it is also the LCD layer that sometimes you're gonna have bending in it. That's not related to the backlight.
And it is unfortunately a downside of LCD technology that uniformity issues are sort of inherent, and it's up to the manufacturers to basically check the quality of the panels and improve their processes.
Carlos asked, did you try the Visio Quantum?
So we actually just received it last night. So we've started testing it today. At the moment though, we don't have a lot of results. It's basically just, we've started the testing process. We expect to publish the review within about 2 weeks if everything goes well. So look out for it.
So M asked Q6 versus 900F. Same price, is the Q6 better? It seems better.
So it depends how you're using it. If you're gaming again, there's a lot of the similar debate between the Q8 and the 900F, that the Q6FN, at least the 2018 model, it has some better gaming features. Overall though, the 900F is better if you watch in a dark room. It's got
pure picture quality, 900F is better than the Q6, but gaming feature, the Q6 has an advantage there. It's a lot more closer to the Q8 to the 900F as far as picture quality goes. The Q6 is really a step down picture quality wise. So it's even though they're at the same price, and the Q8 right now it's pricier, so it's not that fair comparison. But as far as picture quality goes, they are very similar. So another question: which one does better upscaling between these two, Daniel?
So that's also hard to say. We've been wanting to develop an objective upscaling test for a long time. It's difficult though because everyone has slightly different preferences over what they like. So actually the best TV for upscaling is one that you can adjust it. You've got the flexibility to adjust the upscaling performance as you prefer. And in that case, the Sony is a little bit better because it has a few more options there. It's got like the mastered in 4K option if you're watching Sony movies, and it's got a few different like noise reduction options and that kind of thing.
Questions from Tim Lee. Do you think 2019 TVs will be equipped with HDMI 2.1 since the new TVs announced yesterday will still have the 2.0?
Unfortunately, it takes a long time for this kind of technology to propagate. Manufacturers are currently, I think, finalizing their designs for next year.
Yeah.
So it takes time, and most likely no.
No for like the full feature set, but like they're probably gonna do what Samsung does. It's some features like FreeSync they add it now, but like as far as like extra bandwidth, it seems unlikely. Especially since the extra bandwidth it's not really useful now. There's no content that produces it except PC, so probably won't be for 2019. But hopefully we'll see.
So Mooker Trumps, does Android OS on the X900F run any better than on the X900E? It's hard to say. They're both pretty slow. It's not all the time, but they do kind of have times that it's suddenly slow, and trying to change between inputs or go to the home menu takes a while to load. I think even now if I open it up, so I've pressed the home button.
Yeah, it takes a while to load.
That was what, 5-6 seconds or something. So
yeah, they say that the Z9F will have like 60% or maybe 50% improved speed for Android. So looking forward to that, and hopefully the cheaper model next year is going to be also faster for this.
And RacerX, you're right. So one of the best ways actually to improve the performance is by disabling different things. You can go into a special menu and disable all the recommendations. You can disable all this other stuff that will help to make it faster.
So that's it for today. So it's been 30 minutes. So let us know if you like it. So mention in the comments if you like it. If you want us to do more of these type of informal comparison or informal videos about certain subjects, let us also know which subjects you want us to do next if you want this kind of format. And yeah, like this video if you like it. And if you do, we're going to come back for these more in the future.
Cool. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks.